Okay, friends, so welcome to another class by Daily English Classroom. Today we are going to discuss the lesson Danger of a Single Story. This one is written by a Nigerian novelist, and her name is a little bit difficult to say, but it is like this: Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. You know, African names are difficult to pronounce. Anyway, the point is that, yes, welcome to this live class, Divya. And we are starting with the name of the writer. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie was born on September 15, 1977, as a Nigerian novelist, non-fiction writer, and short story writer. She is from Nigeria, and she is writing non-fiction and also short stories, and she is regarded as the most prominent, most important among the young Anglophone authors in African literature. Anglophone here means those who are using English language. Anglophone means those who are using English language. And she is a writer who writes in English, and she is from Nigeria. And her most important works are Purple Hibiscus, Half of a Yellow Sun, and Americana are some of her important works. And before we start this lesson, let me tell you something about this lesson. This is a speech. So maybe this is for the first time we are learning a speech in 10th standard textbook. This is a speech that she delivered for TED.com, TED, TED.com. And if you visit www.ted.com and search for her speech, you can very well find her speech. And we have only some part of that speech for our lesson. Oh, okay. Now let's think about the name of this lesson, Danger of a Single Story. And the first thing you have to understand is that single story is not about any particular story. It's a concept. Single story is in inverted commas. It is a concept. And she is telling us what she means by single story and how dangerous it is. Well, we will learn what actually she means by the term single story in this coming paragraph. Let's take the first paragraph. I am a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about which I like to call the danger of a single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think it probably happened when I was 4. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. So here she is explaining what she means by single story from one example from her childhood days. When she was a child, she started reading from a very early age. Her mother says it's when she was just 2 years of age, but she says that at the age of 4, she started reading different books. She was an early reader and also an early writer. And when she started reading at the age of 4 or 5, the books available for her at that time were British and American books. So the books that she read happened to be, almost all of them happened to be British and American books, because those books were easily available. So the books that she read were British and American books. So what happened? I was also an early writer, and when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustration that my poor mother was obliged to read, I wrote exactly the kind of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. They talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. But I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes and we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. So here she is explaining the danger of a single story. Now she's telling us, elaborating on the concept of single story by talking to us about an experience from her life. When she was a child, I will explain the doubts after this paragraph, okay? So, when she was a child, she started reading, and the most of the books that she reads were British and American books, and so she had seen only white people in their books because the books she read were British and American books. And who are the characters in these books? White people. And what is the setting of the books that she read? Were either in Britain or in America. So the background of those stories in those books were Britain or America. So what happened? What happened? Because she has got a false concept in her mind, or she created a false impression in her mind that reading a book means the characters should be, must be white people, the blue-eyed people, people who are living in cold countries, and people who love to play with ice and snow, etc. And this is talking about the weather is also a usual custom among the British and American people. Whenever they meet a person, they will start a conversation by talking about the weather and the climate. That is their culture and their style. So that is the custom of the British and American people. So she says that when she was a child, she believed that a book means the characters must be white people and the setting must be a country like Britain or America. And these people, white people, they are having blue eyes and they always talk about the weather. But she says that she could never identify herself with any of those characters because she is living in a country. She lives in Nigeria, which is the culture, the climate, vegetations, everything are different from Britain or America. See, in Britain, there is the time of snow, the cold season appears. But in Nigeria, we don't have any such situations. And we have so many apple trees in America or in Britain, but we don't have that in Africa. And she lived in Africa. She lives in Africa. And what is plenty in number is not apple trees but mango trees. And according to the African culture, they don't talk about the climate or weather. They are not giving too much importance to weather or climate, unlike the British or the American people. So what happened? She could not connect herself with these people in the book. So she says that, in other words, we can say that she has developed a kind of single story. We are coming to the concept of single story. What is actually a single story? A single story means a limited knowledge about something. A knowledge that is not complete but only limited. Or we can say it is a false concept, a wrong idea in our mind. So she says that with this example, she is explaining to us that when she was a child, she had a single story about books and literature. Yes, that's our point. So remember this point. She is talking about, Adichie is talking about the concept called single story. The concept called single story. Single story means a wrong idea about something. And the first example that she gives is the books. When she was a child, she started reading, and the books that she read were British and American. She did not get any other books. All the books were British or American, and the characters were white people, their culture, and their life. So she wrongly believed that a book or a literature means that is only for the white people. The characters must be white people. There is no story about the black people or their culture. That is the culture of the African people. So, this is a wrong idea, a false notion about the books that is formed in her mind when she started reading books. Later, she tells us that this concept changed when she started reading books written by other writers, that is non-American or non-British writers, especially the African writers. And in her childhood, she got only the chance to read those books by British and American people. So she made a wrong idea in her mind that books or literature means white people, nothing else, their culture, their. So it's something different, not connected to her life, her country, and her family. So that is a wrong idea, a false notion, and that is a single story about books and literature. Okay, I think that idea is clear to you. It's time for you to ask your doubts. If you have, okay. Sahel has got a doubt. You can ask your doubt. So the first thing you have to remember is this. What is her first single story? She believed that books and literature are only for white people, the blue-eyed people, not for people like her who are not white or black, they are black. So literature is for the white people and not for any other. So she could not connect her life with literature or books. Literature, as we know, is something that is connected with the life of everyone, everywhere. There is no difference. Literature is for human beings, wherever they are, in which country they are. So we have in literature all these things. But what is the problem here? She read only African and American books because only those books were available, and she believed that books or literature means it is only for the white people. The characters should be white people. So what happened when she started writing? It is said that she was also an early writer, and she started reading when she was just 7 years old. And what was special about her works, her early works? She just made some stories, and she drew some pictures with crayons and give it to her mother. And what was the speciality of her works? The character also were white, not connected to her country or her people, and the characters of her work were also white people, because she believed that literature, if something to be literature, if something to be a book, the characters should be white people. Okay, if any of you have any doubt from this part, you may please ask and I will explain that to you. You can just type in your doubts and I will try to clarify them. Or else we'll go to the next paragraph. Okay, I'm waiting. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay, so let's continue with the speech by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I think I will address your doubts at the end of this class, and we are going to go in detail the remaining part of the story. What this shows, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign. I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Now things changed when I discovered African books. There weren't many of them available, and they weren't quite as easy to find as the foreign books. But when I read Chinua Achebe and Camera Lai, I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. So, here, at first, she believed that a book or literature means it is for the white people. But later on, this concept or this false concept, or what we can say in her own terms, the single story about books have changed when she started reading books written by African writers, well, the people from her own country, like Chinua Achebe and Kamara Lai, two important African writers, and she got a chance to read their books, but only later, because it was not easy to get African books. What is available were mostly American and British books, and it was not easy to get an African book. So at last when she got some books by Chinua Achebe and Kamara Lai, who were two important African writers, she made a shocking realization that in literature there is chance for people like me, people like Adichie, people like her, whose skin's color is not white but chocolate in color. They are different from the white people. White people are white, and she is chocolate colored, and her hair is different. They have got long hairs, whereas the African people, they have got curled hairs or kinky hairs. So when she started reading books by Chinua Achebe and Kamara Lai, she realized that people like her can also be there in books, can also exist in literature. So I loved the American and British books I read. They stirred my imagination and opened up new words for me. But African writers saved me from having a single story of what books are. That's very important. She is not against African or American books. She is not against the American or the British books. And she loves those books, British and American books, because it really helped her to improve or to stir her imagination. It helped her to improve her imagination. Whereas the African books helped her, or saved her from a misconception, a wrong idea, a wrong concept in her mind. It saved her from a single story about books and literature, because she believed that books or literature are only for the white people. But when she started reading the African books, she realized that in literature there are people like her. The black people or the people with the color of chocolate with kinky hair can also appear in literature and books. So that's a realization, and she is also thankful to the American or the British books, because they helped her to increase her imagination, to stir her imagination. But African writers saved her from having a single story of what books are. African books helped her from the danger of thinking that literature or books means it is for the white people. Okay, I think the idea is clear to you. In the coming examples also, she is explaining the same concept called single story. Now she just shared with us what was her single story about books and literature when she was a child, and how it is changed when she started reading African books, how she realized that what she had was a wrong idea, a wrong concept. Okay, now let's go to second example. First example is books she read that created a single story about books, but later she changed it. It was wrong and she changed it after reading African books. Now we are going to the second example, which is also something connected to her. I come from a conventional middle class Nigerian family. My father was a professor, my mother was an administrator, also, and so we had, as was the norm, live in domestic help. We would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. Now, the second example to tell us what is a single story, that is connected to a boy who was living in their house, and his name was Fide, because it was the custom, it was the practice to support the poor people, to adopt one boy or girl from a poor family, and to help him to study. All these things were done as a part of doing social service. So there was a boy, a house boy, a boy who is staying in the house of Adichie, because it was the social system to help a poor child. So a boy was staying there in the house, and Adichie's family was taking care of his all his needs, his education, his expenses, everything. And his name was Fide, Fide. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. And always Adichie's mother talked to Adichie about this boy, and she was always telling that Fide's family is very poor. Fide's family is very poor. Why are you wasting food? There are people like Fide who do not have food to eat. Why are you wasting your food? So, repeating every day the same sentence that Fide's family is poor, Fide's family is poor, Fide's family is poor. Hearing this, Adichie, she made a concept in her mind that Fide's family is poor. There is nothing in Fide's family. They don't have enough food to eat. All these things came into her mind. And this is what she believed. That was also a single story that was not true. To say that Fide's family was poor was not true, and she realized it once she visited Fide's family. Let's see how it happened. And my mother, his name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams, rice, and our old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. And what happened here was that Fide's family was poor. Mother was always saying Fide's family was poor, and she is giving their old clothes, some food, everything to Fide, always telling like this. So what actually created this? So what is the idea that is formed in the mind of Adichie? That Fide's family is very poor. They don't have enough food, dress, or anything. This is the idea that was formed automatically in the mind of Adichie. But that was not true. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit his mother, showed us beautiful patterned baskets of dyed raffia that his brother has made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Yes, we are coming to the next point. When he actually, in Adichie's mind, there was only one concept that Fide's family is very poor. They don't have anything in their house, they don't have enough food or dress. They are very, very poor. This is the concept formed in the mind of Adichie. But when one day Adichie visited Fide's house, and when she visited her house, she was actually shocked because his house was not as she imagined, is not without anything else as she imagined. They are doing so many wonderful things in their house, creating some craft and other things, and Fide's mother is preparing some kind of special things using the leaves of raffia. They are making some kind of handicrafts and other things like baskets. So many artworks. They are doing so many artworks at home. So she thought that they are very poor. There is nothing in their house. This is the idea. But that is changed when she visited them and found that they are actually very rich, very rich in the sense that their house is full of so many art and craft things. So the false idea or the wrong idea about Fide's family was that they are poor. There is nothing happening in their house. But actually, when she visited the house of Fide, she realized that they are actually rich in terms of their art and their work, their craft works. His mother, Fide's mother and family, they are making some wonderful baskets and other things. So, Adichie realized with a shock that her earlier concept about Fide, that she is very poor, was totally wrong. It was foolish. So that is the second example we have what a single story is. And now I think you got a better idea about what actually is a single story. A single story is a wrong idea about someone or something that we got from others, but they may not be actually that thing. So this is what happened in the case of Fide. Adichie believed that Fide is very poor. She imagined so many things about his family without any food or anything. But when actually Adichie visited Fide's house, she realized that they are doing so many works and they are not as poor as she imagined. So their poverty was my single story of them. That is the point to be noted. Their poverty was my single story of them. So my concept about their poverty was foolish, was wrong, was only a single story, a wrong idea, an incomplete knowledge. Okay, so that was only a single story of them. Okay, that is the second example. Now we are moving to the third example to say what exactly is a single story. Years later, this happened. The first thing happened when she started reading and writing. Second one happened when she was 7 years old, and then the third example, which happens when she left Nigeria to complete her studies in the university in the United States. Let's see what happened there. Again, the problem of single story or people's wrong concept about Africa and other things. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to the university in the United States. I was 19. Okay, this one happened when she was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. So this is what happened when she was 19 years of age. She went to the university in United States, and there was a girl in her room, and she was an American. And when she realized that Adichie, her roommate, who is sharing that room with him, is an African, then suddenly her mind changed because she has a wrong idea about the Africans. And what is the idea of the roommate, this Adichie's roommate, about people from Africa? They believe that the people from Africa, they don't speak English. They speak some other strange language. And whenever they get time, they will, dance around and do their tribal dancing, all these things. And they are very poor people who don't have any food to eat. This is the idea about Africa for everyone. So what happened when she joined in the university, and when she met her roommate, who was an American girl, she was really surprised because see, an African speaking English. She was so surprised because her concept of the African was that these people are ignorant, foolish people, and they don't speak English, they speak some other language. This was their concept, their single story about Africa. So the roommate was really shocked because Adichie is speaking very fluent English. Then, secondly, she was really shocked to learn that actually the language of Nigeria is English. The official language of Nigeria is English, and she did not know that English was the official language of Nigeria, and she was surprised and confused. Then she told her to show some kind of tribal dance because that is what she thinks about the African people. These people, they make some tribal dance and other things. So the roommate, Adichie's roommate, told her to show some tribal music and dance. And instead, she gave her the latest cassette or tape of the famous American singer Mariah Carey. So she was so surprised because shocking for her, because she has got the latest cassette or tape with her of Mariah Carey instead of tribal dance. So what is expected by the roommate was a tribal music, and what she gave was the latest American singer's cassette or tape. So that was also shocking for the roommate. So all the idea about African people are now shattered for the roommate. So she asked if she could listen to what she called tribal music, and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She was really shocked or surprised to see this tape of Mariah Carey. She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position towards me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. So this is the problem of single story. Many people they think about Africa as a very poor country where so many illiterate people are living, because what comes first to our mind when we are talking about Africa is some images, some pictures about the African people, starving people, that comes to our mind. So we think that Africa means it's like that. But that is wrong. That's only a single story. That is not completely true. That is only one point or one part of the actual truth. So she tells us that even before meeting Adichie, when she learns that this American lady who is staying in that room of Adichie, before actually seeing Adichie, what comes to her mind is that the attitude of patronizing or helping. This white man's complex was there in her mind, because when she heard that an African lady is there, so her actual attitude towards her was that she has to help her, and it is her duty to help the other person. So this type of idea was there in her mind, and she had a kind of pity towards the African people. So that is why she was surprised, because this African lady is not like that. She speaks English very well, and she hears the latest music, and all these things are really different to what she actually expected from an African person. So she tells us that sorry, she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position towards me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well meaning pity. So, what she has got in her mind for an African person is a kind of pity, feeling pity for that person, and if possible, try to help that person. This is the attitude of the white people towards the African people. And then what happened? My roommate had a single story of Africa. So the problem is, what is there in the mind of the roommate? Some pictures, some images, some information about Africa. But that is one sided, or that is incomplete, not complete. So that is why she behaved like this to Adichie. So that is actually the problem of a single story. So she asked if my roommate had a single story of Africa. In this single story, there was no possibility of African being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equal. So, in her idea, in her concept, they think about the African people as the people who needs our help, people who are starving, people who are not intelligent, or people who are not able to speak English. This is the attitude of the people when they hear Africa. But Adichie says that Africa is not completely like that. Because in Nigeria, the official language is English, and they speak English like English people. And there are many rich people also there. Why do we just value Africa in terms of only the poor people? So she tells us that I must say that before I went to the US, I didn't consciously identify as African. But in the US, whenever Africa came up, people turned to me. I did come to embrace this new identity, and in many ways, I think of myself now as African, although I still get quite irritable when Africa is referred to as a country. After I had spent some years in the US as an African, I began to understand my roommate's response to me. So now she, after staying so many years in the United States, she understood why her roommate behaved like that, why she expected her not to speak English, or why she expected her to do some tribal music, and why she asked like that. Now she can better understand, because many people, most of the people, have a wrong idea about Africa, because they think only about one particular thing in Africa, and they think that all people are like that. This is the false concept. This is the single story. This is actually the concept of single story. If I had not grown up in Nigeria, and if all I knew about Africa were from popular images, I too would think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscape. Okay, not this point. This is usually the single story about Africa for 99% of people. What do they think about Africa? In their opinion, in their idea, Africa is like this. But that is not true. That is what Adichie says. And most of the people, they think that Africa is a beautiful place. All agree that it's a beautiful place. Then so many animals, beautiful animals, and incomprehensible people. People cannot understand each other. Incomprehensible people, unable to speak for themselves, waiting to be saved by a kind white foreigner. These people are black people. They are staying there. They don't understand each other. They speak some strange language, and they are waiting for the mercy or kindness of some outsider, a foreigner, someone from some other country. They are waiting for. This is the idea about Africa for most of the people. I would see Africans in the same way that I, as a child, had seen Fide's family. But Adichie says that this is the attitude of many people because they have only some knowledge about Africa. They believe in some popular, famous images or pictures that they saw about the people in Africa. That is why they made such a concept that it is a beautiful land with lots of animals, incomprehensible people, and those people who are waiting for some help from outside. All this idea comes from these popular images and other things. But this is not a complete, this is not the story of complete story of Africa. This is only a single story. It may be true, but that is not complete. That is not full about Africa. I began to realize that my American roommate must have throughout her life seen and heard different versions of the single story. So what is the problem with the roommate? The roommate has heard so many stories about Africa, but all these stories were different versions of the single story that Africa is like that, Africa is like that. She has heard only negative things about Africa. So what happened? She believed that Africa means that. So that is why she behaved like this to Adichie. I began to realize that my American roommate must have throughout her life seen and heard different versions of the single story. A professor once told me that my novel was not authentically African. I did not know what African authenticity was. Okay, now we are coming to the fourth example. So remember, the first example is the books, second one about Fide, and third one is about the roommate, and the next one is the response she got from her own teacher or her own professor. So her professor one day told her that in her books the characters are not fully African. See what he said. Some years ago, the writers, I began to realize that my American roommate must have throughout her life seen and heard different versions of the single story. Okay, here, the fourth one is about a professor. A professor once told me that my novel was not authentically African. And what was the opinion of the professor? The professor said that this novel, her novel, the novel that Adichie writes, were not really African. And what is the reason? I did not know what African authenticity was. The professor told me that my characters were too much like him, an educated middle class man. My characters drove cars. They were not starving, therefore, they were not authentically African. So, even among those educated people, there is a false idea about or a single story about Africa and people in Africa. So one of her professors once called Adichie and told her that the characters in her books, in her novels or in her stories are not completely African because they are educated, because they can ride a car, they can drive a car, and they are not starving. So, what is the concept of Africa in the mind of this professor? There are no cars or anything. They are living in some remote villages, and they are starving or living without getting enough food. This is the concept about Africa even for this professor. So she says that this is completely wrong. So there may be some cases when they really suffered because it's poor. But at the same time, there are many other things happening in Africa. We cannot say that Africa is fully like this by seeing some popular images or some poor things about Africa. By knowing some details connected to the poverty in Africa, we cannot say that Africa is fully like this. That's a wrong idea. That's a single story about Africa. So, but They were not okay. When I learned some years ago that writers were expected to have had really unhappy childhoods to be successful, I began to think about how I could invent horrible things my parents had done to me. But the truth is that I had a very happy childhood full of laughter and love in a very close knit family. There she is talking about her childhood days, and usually people say if you want to become a writer, then you should have some very sad, disappointing experiences in your life when you were a child. And she says that it is also again another single story. It's not true because she lived in a very happy family. But I also had grandfathers who died in refugee camps. My cousin Polly died because he could not get adequate health care. One of my closest friend Oklahoma died in a plane crash because our fire trucks did not have water. I grew up under repressive military governments that devalued education, so that sometimes my parents were not paid their salary. So she says that she's not saying that Africa is full of very educated people. She says that there were some problems, there were some lack of things in Africa, like some of her relatives had faced so many difficulties and problems in Africa. But we cannot say we cannot say that because of these negative things Africa is fully like that. It's not like that. That's only a wrong idea, and that creates some wrong idea about things or persons, or here in this example about Africa. But that's not entirely true. All the people in Africa are not poor. All the people in Africa are living in tribes or doing tribal dance, etc. So all of these stories makes me who I am, but to insist on only these negative stories is to flatten my experience and to overlook the many other stories that formed me. So there are some negative stories and there are some positive stories, and most of the people, they think about the negative side of things. So what happens at the end, we create a kind of wrong idea, a false impression that Africa is like that, it is full of negatives. So that is not true. So she tells us that the single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. So what is the problem actually she is talking about? Single story creates some stereotypes, some kind of an idea. She is not saying that this single story is false. She tells us that the single story may be true, but that is not complete. That is not the complete meaning of something. And but one thing we can say, that it is not complete. It is incomplete. Single stories are incomplete, and sometimes these single stories will become only story. For example, in the case of Africa, we are seeing so many pictures and other things about Africa, and we believe that Africa is this. That is wrong, because it may be true, but that is not a full or complete information. Many good things are also happening there. We get only different versions of the single story, or negative sides or negative things about Africa. So we made a conclusion that Africa is like this. That's wrong. So that's really dangerous to have a single story about something. So we should not form this type of single stories about people, things, or any other things. So that is the idea that she gives through this lesson or through this speech. And she says that it's very dangerous to have a limited knowledge about something. So that is the idea. So I think it's clear to you. I have explained it well. And if you have any doubts or anything, or if you need any clarification from any of this paragraph, you can ask just now. And I'll be posting this live class in our YouTube channel. So you can also share this link to your friends so that they can watch it later. Those who were not here can also watch it later, and tell about this class to your friends. I have explained all the points very well. This will be very useful for you. In case you need any help you can just contact me through my email address, or you can just WhatsApp to my number. So this is my number, and you can note it. You can just send a hi, and I will respond to your questions. Okay, so yes, Priya has said it's a good class, so thanks for that. And you are free to ask if you have any doubts, and I'll be glad to answer your doubts. So altogether, I can tell you is that in this lesson, all you have to do is to understand the concept of single story, and we have 4 or 5 examples, starting from the books, then about Fide and his family, and then about the roommate, and also about the professor, and then okay, that will do 4 or 5 points about what actually a single story is, with some examples and how it is dangerous. It does not give us a complete information. It creates a false impression in our mind that something is like this. Maybe we are only hearing the negative sides, and that has formed a wrong idea in our mind that it is like that. But that's not true. That's not complete, and moreover, it is dangerous as well. So that is what she tells. So if you have any doubts, you can just ask me. I will give 5 minutes for clearing your doubts. You can ask your doubts, and I will try to clarify them for you. Okay, friends, that's all for today. So thanks for watching, and have a nice day.